All right, Mark Meuser was on last week talking about his campaign for U.S. Congress, and we got to talking about election integrity, which is such a hot topic right now that we're having him back.
Yeah, but first, self-defense in emergencies can happen to anyone, and there is no guarantee that the justice system will be on your side. Make sure you are protected for the legal battle after your self-defense battle. And while you protect your family and property, U.S. Law Shield is here to defend you 24/7, 365 days a year, with a comprehensive self-defense coverage at an affordable price. Bad guys don't take days off, and neither does our coverage. Listeners get a free T-shirt when you use the code Gun Owners Radio. Sign up today. Go to uslawshield.com.
All right, Mark Meuser is running for U.S. Senate here in California, and we got to talking to him. And you can see more about his campaign and what he's doing at markmeuser.com. That's MarkMeuser, markmeuser.com. Mark, you there?
I am here. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Fascinated by your campaign, but we kind of stumbled into really more of what you do for your day job at the last interview, and it was so fascinating. I wanted to give it a ton of time. So we have two segments. We're going to ask a bunch of questions. Some of them, short. Some of them in depth. But first, I've been making the point that you're probably the number one guy. You're at least one of the big experts when it comes to California election campaign integrity.
Yeah.
So can you just, in a few sentences, tell people why would I say that? What's your background that qualifies you to talk about campaign integrity?
Well, for about the last 10 years, I have been doing election integrity work with elections. In 2016, I was in Michigan and Wisconsin for the 2016 recount. In 2018, when we had the Democrats just absolutely, obliterate the Republican Party, I was, in San Diego for about 14 days, and I was in Riverside County for about 12 days, watching and observing the entire process and trying to maintain the integrity in some very, very close elections that came down the line. And in 2020, I was in the state of Pennsylvania, monitoring the entire hotline there when the state of California decided to take Donald Trump off the ballot because he wouldn't show his tax returns. I was called to represent 3 taxpayers.
And it goes on and on. You have a ton of experience, and you're an attorney by trade. You specialize in this. What I want to make sure people understand is you're not just a guy with some theories. You're not somebody who has an underground blog and all his research is what he can find on Google. My wife would phrase it, you're the toppest guy. You're not just the top, you're the toppest guy out there. So
I would say that there are other people probably who have more knowledge than I do, but I will hold my own with almost everybody out there. We'll say that.
Fair enough. So here's what I want to know. Is there, and we're going to talk about election fraud, and we're going to talk about election suppression, right? Those are kind of the two.
Yes.
And from your experience, what you've seen officially, not your theory, but what what you've actually seen and can prove and have seen, that sort of thing. How big is election fraud in California? Meaning, people who don't exist that are voting, or people who do vote, their ballots get destroyed. How big a problem is that in California?
I probably my best guess is half to 1%.
Half of 1% of all the votes out there, maybe 0.5% were truly fraud.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So I got to throw my 2 cents in here. What about voter manipulation? Now, I've seen reports that the voting machines that are being used are easily hackable. They're easily, you can manipulate those things like crazy. Did you see anything in that, or do you feel like you have confidence in the voting machines that we use in California?
When I have personally watched them audit the machine reports, I have not seen anything that, where they literally take all the machine counts and they recheck them against what the person actually voted. I have not seen any problems with the machine in the state of California in what I have personally observed. I haven't seen anything.
So going back to what you said the last time, and Mike will be shocked that I remembered this, your attitude was we just didn't get out and vote.
Well, we're going to get to that. Let's really, really hammer voter integrity as far as fraud. Because I really want to make sure people understand this. Now, Mark, you're a Republican. You're actually heavily involved in the Republican Party, right?
Very heavily.
Very heavily. So it's not like, listeners out there, can say, oh, well, this guy's
he's not a Democrat.
He's not some Democrat or he doesn't care. I mean, the narrative, part of the narrative out there, that is by Republicans, I think it's more predominantly by Republicans, is that Republicans are getting screwed in the elections because of voter fraud. And here you are, somebody that would benefit you. If that were happening, that would be a benefit to you because you're trying to get Republicans elected. You're a Republican who is trying to get elected. This is something that you do for a living. But what you're saying is, hey, look, the real thing is, that yes, we should always be vigilant and we should pay attention closely and make sure that everybody's vote is counted and that if you don't exist, your vote's not counted. And if you do vote by mail, it's not thrown away. Like, that's all important and we should pay close attention to it. But in your real world experience as a heavily involved Republican, it's just not happening so widespread that many, or really any, or I should say very few. I don't want to do big, huge absolutes, but very few, if any, elections are swayed by true voter fraud in California. Is everything I just said accurate?
I would agree with that statement.
Okay, so if that's not exactly happening, Mark, what is the most important thing people should know about voter fraud before we get to voter suppression? What's the most important thing that people should know about voter fraud, preventing voter fraud, making your vote count, that sort of thing? What's the most important thing voters should know in California, in your opinion?
And should do.
Okay, the biggest problem in California elections is that the Secretary of State and the Register of Voters are not doing their job of cleaning the voter rolls. So that way, when people move or people die, or actually even when somebody gets married and changes their last name, the Register of Voters is creating bloated voter rolls. And that the problem is that we all think in a day of big data and everything like that, the Register of Voters are cleaning this up. And unfortunately, we get these bloated voter rolls so that, most of the time, it's a no harm, no foul. We all see it. Somebody moves out of the state and all of a sudden there's a ballot comes to them and it gets tweeted out. Or, my grandpa's been dead for 15 years and look at this. Or, someone says, I got married 7 years ago and all of a sudden I got a ballot in my maiden name and a ballot in my real name. And look, there's two different things. I could have easily voted twice. And so the biggest problem with California elections, in my opinion, is the Secretary of State and the Register of Voters are not doing their job to properly use big data to ensure that there's integrity in our election where only those people who are eligible to vote are registered to vote.
But if there's not a fraud issue, why would bloated voter rolls? Why is that a problem? If there really isn't a widespread fraud issue, then why would a bloated voter roll matter? What does that do?
Well, that is where the fraud takes place. Because
Talk about
you have
that.
bloated voter roll. Because you have bloated voter rolls, that is where somebody can cast multiple ballots. Maybe somebody gets two ballots, one in their maiden name, one in their real name, and the state sends them two ballots, and they vote both and send them back. Well, by law, one person, one vote. it's not because I have a maiden name and a regular name, I get to vote twice, or I don't get to vote for Grandpa and myself, And so there are people who are unethical. There are people who like power and try to maintain power. In fact, I was just reading a story this week of, believe it or not, George Washington committing election fraud back in the 1760s.
Wow.
He had a position of power, and he went to the sheriff and said, Sheriff, I want you to let my friends and my family vote first. And since you had to vote out loud, it just showed that there was this overwhelming support for George Washington. And the first 15 people who voted, among them were George Washington's cousins and brothers. And the sheriff basically ensured that there was this, by the time anybody could vote for the other side, there was already this huge gap that had already happened. And unfortunately, what happens is when people are in power, they manipulate the system to make sure that they stay in power. And when you have bloated voter rolls, that is just one of the tools that can be used to ensure that you get extra votes in some very close elections.
So what's that percentage?
That's a part of that half.
That's that 0.5%.
Oh, that's that. That's
so yeah. So I guess that's kind of my question is, if we solve that completely, Mark, we're really only talking about 0.5%. I mean, we don't want that 0.5% to grow to 10%, but it's important to have accuracy. But really, even if we solve that problem completely, we're still really talking about 0.5%. Like, for example, the recall. I mean, the no recall won by like a 2-to-1 margin. That 0.5% wouldn't have made a difference, right? I mean, that's what we're talking about, is that 0.5%.
Yes, but what happened is because of the election irregularities or the potential of fraud, people were talking about it on social media. It was being covered in the mainstream media, and what happens is voter suppression because people say
that voter suppression, we're going to hit that on the other side of the commercial, because that's where this is all going. That's why this is important.
And we have to figure out how to correct that, because I guarantee you, if this was going the other way and a Democratic state was electing Republicans left and right, they'd be in there with their broom cleaning this up so fast your head would swim. We didn't get staring.
The answer.
No. A little bit of a delay.
Give her one job, just one job.
I didn't want to commandeer his.
I know, because he does get a little testy.
My gosh.
Stomp all over him. Hey, folks, our freedom of speech is just as important as our freedom of self-defense. And we are thrilled to support an American company like MyPillow. Go to MyPillow.com and use the code FREEMARKET3 and get up to 66% off America's best pillow. Get a great night's sleep and enjoy the satisfaction of supporting companies fighting against cancel culture. That's MyPillow.com and use the code FREEMARKET3 for up to 66% off.
All right, we're talking to Mark Meuser, who's running for U.S. Senate, but we're talking to him about his day job, which has to do with election integrity. And we just talked about how much of a problem it is. And we want to roll into what the real problem is. But before, we actually had somebody write in, Mark, and they since the last election, you've had the ability to print out your own ballot. Is that a problem? Is that a solution? What are your thoughts on that?
In order to print out your own ballot, you actually have to enter in your driver's license, and because your ballot has a barcode on it, they're able to, or your envelope has a barcode on it. It actually, the second you enter in that you're printing your own ballot, it actually vacates any other prior ballots. So as such, it is not an issue that has great concern with me. I don't like it. I think we're making this election process very confusing by having 15 million types of ballots, and it's making it harder for registered voters to do their job, which, when you have all these various ways to vote, and you're opening them up to everybody, it was really designed for a system for people on nuclear submarines who weren't able to get their mail. It was a system designed for them to vote. And now we're just opening it up to everybody. And, the problem is it creates a lot more work for our registered voters. It takes longer to count, and it creates more insecurity and causes people to be concerned about the integrity of the election. And most people don't understand the procedures behind it, but ultimately that is one of the many things that came down in the last 4 months that really caused people to be concerned that their vote actually does not matter.
Okay, so and you were saying, hey, yeah, election fraud is a problem. Anytime if one person out there is casting a fraudulent vote or destroying someone's legitimate vote, that's a problem. But it may not be the issue or the problem. The issue, the problem, much broader problem, I guess, is what you call voter suppression. Right now, we're gun owners. Suppression. We love suppressors. That's but in this situation, it sounds like it's not as good. Talk about why people's perception that voter fraud is so widespread that it's leading to voter suppression and why that's a problem.
What happens when people think that their vote doesn't matter is they're less likely to participate in our system, whether it's they don't give campaign contributions, maybe they don't donate their time to their favorite candidates or parties, or they, it's just like, one of the candidates running for governor actually has said, I didn't even vote in such and such presidential election because my vote didn't matter because I lived in California. And I'm going to take us back to 2018. In 2018, I ran for Secretary of State, which was the chief election officer of the state. I got 4.4 million votes. I lost by about 3 million votes. But the more telling number is 4.5 million people who were registered to vote, knew that they had a civic duty to vote, but simply decided not to vote because the Democrats were going to win anyways. And so what we are seeing, even in the recall election, we were able to see that approximately 2 million people who voted for Donald Trump in 2020, who had a ballot mailed to them at their house, decided not to even turn it in. And we still have yet to figure out why they didn't, but it appears from what I'm able to gather, the reason why they didn't do it is they thought that their vote didn't matter because of voter fraud or Gavin Newsom that was already going to win. And so the problem is, I'm sure everybody in the studio here today and most of your listeners actually are going to vote. They're what we call perfect voters because they are actually engaged with the system. They understand the importance of it. But the problem is the vast majority of Californians just want government out of their life. They just want to go to Billy's T-ball game. They want to go to Sally's gymnast meet. They want to go to school. They want to just live their life. They don't want government involved. And when they hear stories about voter fraud, it is used as a justification as to why they're not going to take the time to study the ballot and actually cast their vote.
So with what's going on right now in today's society, with the mandates and the lockdowns and all that, is this going to make more people angry enough to vote? And second part of that question, once you get into the U.S. Senate, what are you going to be able to do to correct this, or is it even correctable as far as – because once we eliminate the fact that, no, my vote doesn't count, and some way, somehow we've got to let people know that it does count, what could you do?
Okay, I like the second question, but to answer the first question, we are actually seeing some very positive signs from the recall election that there was a lot of people who came to the polls to vote for the very first time. They hadn't voted in the last 4 years, and they were registered to vote, and they showed up. And so, yes, what was actually surprising was all the people who just tend to vote in the general election who stayed home, even though they had a ballot mailed to them. so what we saw is that there is a new group of people that are just getting upset with this government, saying you're essential, non-essential, or the government mandates, and they're saying enough is enough. I can no longer not be involved in politics. And this is very similar to what we saw in 1994 after Hillary Clinton had tried to push social life medicine on everybody. We actually saw a lot of people kind of wake up and go to the polls to vote. And what the pollsters are kind of saying is that 2022 it's looking like it's going to be a 1994 election where a lot more people come to the polls to vote because they are just fed up. And so one of the things I'm doing as running for U.S. Senate is, yes, election integrity is a problem, but it's a problem that we can overcome if we simply get out and vote. And there are millions of gun owners in the state of California who appreciate their Second Amendment right, but for some reason or other, they stay home. And it's important for people like me to get on radio stations such as yours and remind them that if we want our constitutional rights protected, it is important that we actually exercise our God-given, not just responsibility, but duty to vote. And no greater place is that important than right here in the state of California. And I would say even in San Diego, with all the military bases that we have, it's important that we ensure that we get out and vote to protect the people who give us that right to vote.
So I've had this idea rattling around in my head, and I haven't talked to too many people about it. I'm in television as well as radio. Why can't we allow candidates to go on television without having to buy TV time? Because the TV stations, they'll sell advertisement around, let's say, when you come on. If everybody knows you're coming on, TV stations sell. So you don't have to pay for TV. That way, everybody running for governor, senate, what have you, will have free television. And then you put a cap on how much money you can spend. Because don't you agree one of the other reasons Newsom got out of this mess was because the amount of money he spent doing radio, TV, and print?
Well, he definitely outspent the proponents of the recall about 35-1.
Right.
So yes, it was. He was basically able to message from both sides pretty well. And I asked, one of the problems, is if there's a highly contested race. The media will set up debates and allow the people to get on and debate. But what happens in California is that the Democrat Party has said, we're not going to debate Republicans because we're not going to give them equal airtime. We just can raise more money and we're going to just buy our airtime, and we won't allow them to. We won't be accountable to the people to actually, stand up for what we actually believe in. And, the media, to an extent, allows them to get away with this by not saying, well, if you're not going to show up, we're going to just give the time to the other side. Instead, the media just says, well, we don't have a controversy, we don't have a debate, so we're not going to do it.
But there's got to be a way to, I don't know if you'd make it a law or what have you, because we're not playing on an even playing field.
Well, we're not even showing up.
Well, and that too.
We're not even showing up.
But if we had that,
is,
don't you think people would?
I don't think we need another law. I don't think we need another mandate. We need people to embrace the responsibility that they have of living in a country of the self-governed, the free, that embrace it, where government protects your liberty. We need people to embrace that responsibility and show up. If you can't even show up and vote in a recall election with this governor, I mean, this was clearly an example. Marx is as big as it gets. He's saying that, hey, fraud didn't lose this election. Mm-hmm. He's saying that people didn't show up. They didn't show up, and that's so ridiculous. Right. It's another example of Republicans grabbing defeat out of the jaws of victory from sitting on their hands. It's ridiculous. Mark, I'm so sorry. Thank you so much for all your time. This was awesome. please go check out his website, markmeuser.com, MARKMEUSER.
All right. Hey, did you know law-abiding gun shops and manufacturers had their credit card processing shut down because their vendors think guns are inappropriate? Well, shutting down businesses that support your constitutional right to self-defense is wrong, which is why we're so excited to have 365 Glacier Payments as a 10-ring partner. 365 Glacier Payments specializes in companies in the firearm industry. So if you have a business that accepts credit cards, give them a call today so you can enjoy the peace of mind that your account won't be shut down, and also enjoy the best rates. Visit their website at 365glacierpayment.com. Ask for a free account review, and if they can't beat your credit card processing rates, they'll pay you $100. Now, do you have to sell guns?
No, I was about to say, even if you're listening to this show and you process credit cards, no matter what your business is,
You could be a 7-Eleven.
there you go. Support 365 Glacier because they're supporting gun owners.
See, we got to add that to the script because I think that's important that people think, if you're Turner Gun Store, that's the only place.
Or whatever. Yeah, you're selling lemonade.
Awesome.
Well, it doesn't matter. If you're accepting credit cards, call 365 Glacier and
That's
get a
good
quote.
news. That's good.
How cool was that segment? What did you think of that, Laura?
Oh, man.
Oh, I liked it a lot.
What did you like about it?
Well, the disillusionment of the misconception.
Did it clear
around-
up any misconception?
Yeah.
Did you think there was massive fraud?
It seems that way in social media, and I think that that's kind of part of the problem. He pointed that out too, right? Where if you see something on social media, we all believe it. All of a sudden, like the one person who got 2 ballots, and it's just like, well, that's it. I'm giving up. That I'm not going to vote. But it was interesting that he.
Well, and it didn't hurt that the media found the guy sleeping at a Del Taco with a bag of 300 votes, ballots. Oh, look. So you automatically think, oh, if there's 300 there's got to be 300 there, and then 5,000 here and 6,000 there.
But one thing that conservatives like is, like, I want to see the numbers. I want to see the statistics. Right. And if the statistics are that less than 1% is fraud, then it is about just getting out and voting.
Well, you know what, though? I don't want to convince you that there's no fraud. If you're listening out there, okay, if you believe there's fraud and it's widespread, great. Keep believing that. But don't not vote. I mean, you don't. They don't have to commit fraud if you stay home.
I guess that means that your vote is really more important now than it was before, because if you do think there's fraud,
vote twice.
Vote.
That's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, that was not a good idea. No. You've been so strong on the fraud aspect of it. And then a percent. How many people are in California?
Yeah, 35 million, something like that. I forget how many voters.
A percent, that's what?
Half a percent. It's not even a full percent.
Yeah, and you're a banker. I mean, that's not a lot. I don't know
it's not a lot. It's just, it's too many.
Well, yeah.
Any fraud is too many.
Yeah.
But if your response to fraud is to not vote, then you're just handing them victory.
And don't you think the Democrats are going to be hell-bent in 22 and 24?
They don't have to be. They just have to make sure that Republicans stay home.
Well, I know, but I mean,
I hear what you're saying.
If you're on that fraudulent train, I mean, because right now, I mean, if you look at the ratings of the president and the vice president and where they're at, they're going to have to work really hard to get their side, which is not difficult. For one thing, you can give the credit to the Democrats. They can
awesome ground game.
Awesome ground game. They get together like nobody's business.
And I was about the next part of that. Okay, so maybe people out there are listening and they're saying, "Hey, I voted, so it's not me. He's not talking to me." Well, the next step on that is you got to find 10 people. Everybody's got to find 10 people and make sure 10 people that weren't going to vote and make them vote. Don't go find 10 people that are already going to vote. If you find 10 people that were already going to vote, make them find 10 people that aren't that weren't going to vote and make sure they vote.
You know how many people are afraid to even talk politics nowadays? They don't even want to bring it up.
Then we lost.
I totally agree.
Lost. Now we have another. We don't have to wait for next year. We don't have to wait for 2022. We don't have to wait for 2024. There's an election going on right now. San Diego County Gun Owners endorsed Laura Lothian and La Mesa. This is absolutely a winnable race, but it's also a losable race. If everyone stays home and says, I'm not going to do anything, or, gee, I'm sure someone else will do something, then we're going to lose.
Well, and I think that's the bellwether is we sit these people that sit home, maybe they're not voting, And if the Democrats win again, then it's easy for them to say, oh, well, that's it, you know.
Well,
and what about the one in West Virginia where McCullough?
Right. Yep. No. Well, but right here, right now, November 2nd, there is an election. San Diego County Gun Owners endorsed Laura Lothian. If you go to Laura for La Mesa, Laura, F-O-R, LaMesa.com, you can donate. You can sign up to help her. If you look at our emails, we're going to have all kinds of opportunities to help her, but mostly let's get a couple bucks in her coffers.
Now, that's just La Mesa, right?
You can live anywhere. You can live anywhere and donate to a candidate running in La Mesa.
Okay. But like me in Alpine, I won't get a ballot.
You won't get a ballot, but anyone, Alpine, anywhere in San Diego, you can go and help her win. Right. You can donate to her. You can get
her
people to
$100.
If you know anybody in La Mesa, tell them to vote. I mean, this is how
I'd
it's
go to the
supposed to
Chase
work.
Bank, but it's not there.
Yeah, really. This is how it's supposed to work. You're supposed to care about who in your community is running for office and whether or not they win.
Yeah. How many times do we need to be slapped in the face until we finally figure out that it's as simple as going down?
It's not fun anymore.
No, it used to be.
Getting smacked in the face it's kind of fun, right?
Yeah,
First couple times.
Yeah. But
now it just hurts.
Yeah, now it's just, and it's really starting to hurt.
Yeah, now I'm going, ow.
Well, now we have to start really fighting back, because if we keep letting this steamroll through town, because you have said it once, you have said it 8 million times, we have to start at the local levels.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.